Hi, fans of high-quality entertainment. Once again, I'm borrowing a idea from Scott from the Prague Corner, even though I have done this kind of idea in the past. So his premise is you can only pick 5 bands to listen to, their whole discography, including live albums, but just, for what I'm going to do, but just their official releases, studio albums and live albums. And Scott did 5. So check out his channel. The link will be below. Yeah, and I noticed that today Michael Noland, he also credited Scott, and he chose his 5 classic rock bands. But what I want to do is expand on that and include solo artists. So I'm doing top 10 desert island bands and solo artists. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be 5 and 5 or anything, whatever. And this was difficult. So here we go. And I've kind of ranked them in order of favorites. So yeah, check out Michael's video also. I will say I was very surprised of his number 2 choice, ABBA. I did not know he was an ABBA fan. Number 10, Blue Oyster Cult. I've been a fan of them since 1970. Well, yeah, the same amount of time as Sparks. 1974. I have their whole discography, all of their live albums and everything. And they're such an interesting band that I never get bored of playing Blue Oyster Cult. They're just one of those bands that every time I listen to any one of their albums, it's never boring for me. You always pick up something new in the music. So they're number 10. Number 9. Now this was difficult because at first I had David Bowie in this list of top 10 because David Bowie has, a lot of great studio albums and live albums too. But I would have had to leave Captain Beefheart off this list. And I'm just such a huge fan of Captain Beefheart that I just had to replace him, even though he's got a smaller discography than David Bowie. So just know I love David Bowie, but he's not going to the desert island with me. Let's move on. So he's number 9. Number 8. Yes. No, that's the name of the band. Yes. Yeah, I couldn't do without John Anderson's voices, especially. And, of course, the band is great. Steve Howe, one of my all-time favorite guitarists. Chris Squire, one of my all-time favorite bassists. I even love, some of their lesser-loved albums like Tornado or Tornado. I love Tales from Topographic Oceans. Their later albums with John Anderson like Magnification and Key Studio. There's 2 or 3 albums I'm not crazy about, like Union is one of them, or Onion. But yeah, you got to have Yes on your desert island. So they're number 8. Number 7. Another solo artist, Lou Reed. I can't cheat and say and including the Velvet Underground. But, the Velvet Underground for me only had 4 albums. I don't include the 5th album because that was basically a Doug Yule solo album. But yeah, that's the reason I didn't choose the Velvet Underground, because there's only 4 albums and then maybe a couple of live albums too. But Lou Reed has a very big discography. and I have all of the albums, and including the live albums, of course. And so, yeah, he would be on the desert island to cheer me up. Number 6. Yeah, the Beach Boys. And, this is why, like I said, I have done this kind of idea, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. And there's no way the Beach Boys probably wouldn't have been in my top 50. But, I had a deep dive of some other albums I wasn't familiar with from the 60s and early 70s. And I'm just a huge fan now. So they would be, well, they're on my list. Number 5. It's Ween. And I thank Pow again for the 2 Ween t-shirts. And she also gave me, I think, 4 or 5 CDs by Ween. Once again, yeah, like 2 years ago, I hadn't even heard any of their music 2 years ago. And now I'm a huge fan. I love all of their catalog. And, even though it's not a large catalog compared to some of these other bands, I need my Ween. That doesn't sound right. I don't know if you want to call them a band or a solo artist. I guess they're more of a duo. But, they did have a full band the last few years that they were recording and doing live shows. All right, number 4. It's Frank Zappa. You got to have Frank, like if you like Frank Zappa, you should pick him because he's got 800 albums. No, he's got, I think, over 80 official albums, something like that. And I've got maybe 40, 45 of them. But yeah, I would have his whole entire discography. That would keep me busy for many, many years on a desert island. And, I would say I love probably 80% of his music. He's got such a large catalog of music. I'm not going to love all of it, but 80% is pretty good. Number 5. Yeah. Sir Paul McCartney. Yeah. He's, once again, lots and lots of albums. Of course, that would include, it's including Wings, because I consider everything in Paul's solo career all together, at least for me. You might disagree, and that's okay. But, yeah, I never get tired. There's always a certain album I want to listen to. London Town, Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, Venus and Mars, McCartney's first album, Ram, of course. Just so many great albums. I think you know what number 2 and number 1 are. It's Sparks. Yeah. And later today, the UK album charts are going to be released. And Sparks' new album, Mad, has a good chance of being their very first, in over 50 years, people, their very first number 1 album. Even if it doesn't, even if it just gets to number 5 or whatever, that's great, of course. But it would be great if they finally had a number 1 album in the UK after over 50 years of creating music. And number 1, it's Foghat. No, it's the Beatles, not Foghat. Yeah, and once again, I never, I understand some people get tired of listening to them. I can see that. But just for me, personally, I never get tired. I usually focus on their later albums after, like Rubber Soul, Revolver, from then on. I don't play their earlier albums as much. Not that I don't love them, but I would say I listen to the Beatles weekly. Abbey Road, the White Album, the bonus tracks on the White Album. I love those. The Red and Blue albums, the remixes. So yeah, always listening to the Beatles because they are the best. And that is it. I would love your thoughts in the comments section below. Maybe you don't, maybe just your top 5 bands if you want, or you can do this, the top 10, including solo artists. So that's it. Make sure you check out Scott and Michael's videos on their top 5 bands. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.